Hello my friends, welcome to my channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. I have got 7 books to tell you about that I finished recently, and before I get to that, I'll tell you a little bit about what's been going on with me in our new house. I've been here a week and a half. The kitchen counter is made of a really hard surface like corian or something like that. And I made a note to myself that I was going to have to be careful. And the same day that I thought that, the teapot cozy caught the lid and it came off at the same time and smashed on the counter, the little knob, you know, at the top. So I did a repair job. I will include some footage at the very end if you want to stick around for that and see how I repaired my teapot. I have 2 big teapots and I use them both for my morning tea. And this is my method. I put hot water in one pot to get it nice and hot, fill it up, and I brew my tea in the other pot for 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, I pour out the hot water and pour the brewed tea into that pot, put the tea cozy on, and it stays nice and hot while I sip my tea for half an hour or so and read in the mornings. That's the tea story. I also have a cake story. I did bake another cake from the book You Are Human and You Need Cake by Julie Van Rosendahl. I have talked about this book before, and I've also talked about this recipe before. It's the lemon pound cake recipe. That's actually a blend between a pound cake and a yogurt and olive oil cake, because it's got half butter and half olive oil, and it does contain yogurt. I made this one with limes because at the grocery store in the quick sell bin there was a dozen limes for $2.50, and how could I resist? So now everything is going to be limes for the next week or so. The cake was delish, by the way. We were invited out for tea and brought it along. Yeah, but it was the first cake that I baked in our new house, so kind of special for that reason too. Now on to bookish news. This is Canadian Literary Awards season. I'm talking about the Giller, and the winner is going to be announced on November 13th. I'm not going to talk much about that except to say that 3 of the books that are on the short list are books that were on my Giller long list wish list, so I'm happy about that. And then in these other awards, including the GGs, the Governor General's Award, there's I think 9 different categories in the GGs. Those winners are going to be announced on November 8th. And in the fiction category, there's Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Meyer. Now, that book was published last year and won the Giller Prize last year. They use a different eligibility time period for the GGs. It's from August 1st of the previous year till July 31st of this year. So it was published in September, so it's eligible. Might win again. It's certainly a great book. I loved it, and it was my pick actually, and also the Shadow Giller's pick for the Giller last year. So I'm all on board for it, but there are some other great books that are on the GG finalists. I will link below to the GG site. One of the other books that's made the finalists is a book that was on my Giller wish list this year. It's In the Upper Country by Kai Thomas. I will link to the video where I talked about that book below. And because I include chapters, timestamps, you can navigate directly to that book if you want to know what I had to say about it when I read it. Of the other books, I also read We Spread by Anne Enright, and I'll also link to my talk about that one. And then two books that I haven't yet read, including History of Burning by Janica Oza and Chrysalis by Anuja Farghese, or Farghese. I don't know how to say her name, sorry. This book, Chrysalis, is a collection of short stories, and it is also on the Writers' Trust shortlist for emerging queer writers. So I am eager to get to that one sooner rather than later. In the drama category for the GGs, there is a play that I've seen, not read. William Shakespeare's As You Like It, a radical retelling. It's by Cliff Cardinal. Loved it. In the young people's literature text category, there's the book Weird Rules to Follow by Kim Spencer. I talked about that, I think, in December last year. I will link my video below in case you missed it. And the great thing about Weird Rules to Follow, it won in 3 different categories in the Canadian Children's Book Centre Awards this year. And each category has their own panel of judges. So individually, all 3 panels decided this one was the best book. So definitely one for you to check out. It won in the biggest category, the overall category. There's a $50,000 prize for the writer, the TD Canadian Children's Literature Award, also in the historical fiction category and in the debut author category. Kim Spencer is Tsimshian from Kitchela, BC. Weird Rules to Follow has also been shortlisted for other awards, Indigenous Voices Awards, the BC and Yukon Prize. So many accolades for this great book about an Indigenous girl growing up. Congratulations to Kim Spencer. There's also a Young People's Literature illustration category, and I have talked about a couple of books in this finalists list. I will link my videos below. One of them is Still This Love Goes On by Buffy St. Marie and Julie Flett. I loved it. And the other one was another 5-star read for me, The Skull by John Clausen, which I talked about recently. And Jack from Spread Book Joy also did a single review video and actually a lovely deep dive into it. So I will link her video below. And another Canadian Literature Award, the Writers' Trust Awards, have also been announced, the finalists, and 2 from the fiction finalist lists were on my Giller wish list, so happy to see them recognized. In the Upper Country by Kai Thomas, and A Grandmother Begins the Story by Michelle Porter. And again, you can find links to the videos where I talked about these books down below. My plan is to read more of the picture books that are in those categories in a couple of these awards, and then I will talk about them in a future video. Please let me know if that is something you're interested in. Just use the comments thing down below. All right? Okay, now on to the books that I finished. I am going to keep the best for last because that's how I normally do it, but also because it's the only 5-star read of the bunch. I was starting to despair. three stars, 3.5 stars, 4 stars, 3.5 stars. You know, I was kind of in that range, which for me, I'm still going to recommend. And certainly you might even like these better than I did, or yeah, final book is superb. So I'm going to start with Anne Enright's The Wren, the Wren. I listened to this in audiobook, and it was read by the author and 3 others. It's mostly in alternating voices between a mother and daughter in Ireland. They have a kind of strained relationship, and it's a quiet story that shows how a previous generation, so the grandmother and grandfather, and their actions had reverberations onto the next 2 generations, and that actually is quite well done. But I found this very slow until I got pretty close to the end, so I'm glad I stuck with it. I'm thinking it was probably the mood that I was in, just with all the packing and moving and stress of all that. It took a while to really grab my interest, but once it did, yeah, I totally warmed to it by the end, and I thought the ending was especially lovely. Now the covers, by the way, the North American cover is this diner scene, which I find totally bland, and I don't like the way the title disappears into the sky in the background, whereas the British cover with the bird and more abstract background I find really appealing. I don't know. What do you think about these 2 covers? Let me know. On to another audiobook that was especially so-so. This one is called Allergic. It's nonfiction. The subtitle is Our Irritated Bodies in a Changing World, and it's by Theresa MacPhail, who's an American author. The audiobook is read by Jaime Lamchick. This one, I found myself skipping through to the next chapter when I felt like I got enough of the gist of something. Maybe because I knew a lot of the information that was in this audiobook, or again, the state of mind that I was in. If you're interested in allergies and the whole thing about food sensitivities and how our environment is making us more allergic, you might be interested in this. I just thought a lot of times there was too much irrelevant detail. Like, just give me the facts, please. Next up are a couple of wordless picture books. Now, these kind of hit the spot for me in the state of mind that I was in. Just look at some pictures to tell me the story. They're both Canadian. I'll start with Gretel and Hansel by B. Waeland. This is a retelling of Hansel and Gretel, in which the witch is kindly and generous, and the 2 children are greedy and misbehaving. This is one that is fun for all ages. B. Waeland's style of art is to emphasize simple shapes and bright contrasting colors. I'll show you some images in here so you can see what I mean. It's fun, it's bright, and it allows children to tell the story themselves because there's no words, or an adult can say, have more interaction with the child on your lap as you're saying, what's happening here, what do you think? Yeah, plus the moral question of what these children are doing, eating up the witch's house and making it fall down. And the second wordless picture book is called Once a Bird. The illustrations are by Nathalie Dion. And the story itself, it's described as imagined by Rina Singh. Imagined by because she didn't, her words are actually not in the book. It's wordless, as I said. And Nathalie Dion has used digital paintbrushes to create a very textured effect. Sometimes, it's like you can see brush strokes and textured paper and pastel marks, and yet this is all done digitally. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful, and it's a story of how looking to nature can help us reconnect with each other and the world around us. A truly lovely, lovely story. It's just beautiful. And then these last 3 books that I'm going to tell you about are all by Indigenous authors, and I'll start with an audiobook, Moon of the Turning Leaves by Waubgeshig Rice. This is the second in a series. The first one was Moon of the Crusted Snow. It's post-apocalyptic, 12 years on from Moon of the Crusted Snow, when a group of people, an Indigenous group who are in the far north of Ontario, they decide that it's time to move for better hunting and fishing, and they don't know who else might have survived and whether it's even safe to go out. So it's a wandering survival story that I found a little too predictable for my taste, and maybe too much on the nose, again, for my taste. If you're into post-apocalyptic survival stories, this could be perfect for you. The audiobook is read by Billy Merasty, and he is Cree, and there is a lot of Anishnaabe words in the novel, and I think he does a good job with them. That's one of the joys of listening to audiobooks that have other languages in them. And I found that Billy Merasty reads with such clear precision and maybe a little, for me, too much emphasis on certain words, but I was able to increase the speed to 2 times and still understand. Now, I usually listen to audiobooks at 1.25, so to increase all the way to 2 times is almost unheard of for me. In this case, it worked, and I was able to get through to the end of the book. I know some of you have strong feelings about increasing the speed on audiobooks, but I guess it's not even the same for me as skimming, because with skimming, I'm not catching every word, whereas with listening to this audiobook in particular, I was getting it all. So it's just like reading really, really fast, I guess. And next up is a brand new book by Katherena Vermette, The Circle. It's the 3rd in a trilogy, although it's not exactly a series. It's more like 3 interconnected novels, because each stands alone, although I think you get the most out of it if you read them in order, starting with The Break, and then The Strangers, and then this last one, The Circle. It's told in 22 different voices, and I love multiple points of view like that. And it's all these different people who are affected by a single event, which is that a young woman is released from prison and then almost immediately goes missing. So all the things that happen surrounding that. I had the book out on a 1-week loan from the Greater Victoria Public Library, so I don't have it to show you, but I did transcribe a little bit just to give you a flavor of it. So this voice is Waban, who's an elder, a healer. Almost all of the characters in this book are Indigenous, by the way. Everyone seemed to treat him like he was vermin, less than vermin. Vermin at least got a role in the world. He never got a role. He thought it was something he had done wrong. That's the worst thing of colonization. Worst in a long, long list of the atrocities and numerous genocides, that it got into their minds and hearts. All those young people who were supposed to be leading, doing, being a part, were instead thinking they were wrong. Instead of feeling good about themselves, they believed those lies. So many still believe, like he did, what they said about them and forgot, because that was taken from them too, how it was supposed to be. This actually reminded me a lot of one of the themes in Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein, about how we can internalize hatred directed towards us, or fear and mistrust and all of that. Okay, on to the last book. So this was my favorite of the bunch, Women of the Fur Trade by Frances Koncan. It's a play. Frances Koncan is also a journalist, and this story is such fun to read. I'm sorry that I didn't get to see it performed in Stratford. It was mounted there earlier this year, but it had already finished by the time that I visited Stratford to see some plays. If you get a chance, do look for it. It's quite funny. 3 women sitting in rocking chairs, 2 Indigenous and 1 is white, and they go back and forth between being in Canadian history and then more contemporary times. For example, talking about Winnipeg, which is a city known for simultaneously being the murder capital of Canada and the most racist city in Canada. We're also the Slurpee capital of Canada. Don't forget that. And as a matter of fact, in the book that I just talked about, The Circle by Katherena Vermette, there is a woman who talks about how she loves Slurpees even in the winter. I'm going to do a little excerpt for you. I've made puppets. Here we have Louis Riel, and this is Frances Koncan. She is going to be playing the part of Marie Angelique, who is Métis. So, 2 Métis characters. I believe in fate. I believe in the land. I believe in the Métis people. I believe in you. I've been waiting for you for so long. My friends and I are trapped in a room in the fort, and I've prayed and prayed that you would find us and free us. How did you get out here? I climbed through a window. That's the only kind of freedom that counts, the kind you make for yourself. I must be off. Take me with you. I can fight. I work alone. I'll be quiet. I'll bring snacks. I subsist solely on the blood of my enemies. I can accommodate dietary restrictions. So, a little scene from Women of the Fur Trade. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching, and stick around if you want to see how I fix the little piton on the top of my teapot. Bye for now. So here's the broken teapot, and I'm gonna figure out how to put a new little knobby thing on here. So I'm gonna make some salt dough. This is a mixture of flour and cornstarch, and this is salt dissolved in hot water.